Today's episode is brought to you by We Break You Buy. Interested in sports cards and memorabilia? Check out We Break You Buy on TikTok. We Break You Buy is a small operation run by three brothers, offering spots for a chance at winning some incredible sports cards and memorabilia. That's We Break You Buy. Check it out today on TikTok. Happy New Year, gentlemen.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, this is our first recording of 2024. It won't be the first episode that the listeners hear, but, we record these out of order just because we like to challenge ourselves. Well,
Yeah.
this is Why Wasn't It Better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
We have a return guest with us, Peter Baldeo, longtime veteran of the podcast. Welcome back.
Welcome
Thank
back,
you.
Peter.
Thank you, guys. Grateful to be here on first day of the 2024 year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just grateful to be here. I'm alive and well. Things are going well. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me back.
Excited to have you on our first official recording of 2024.
Let's go.
Yeah, and this was just an episode that the second that I knew that we were going to cover this film, Peter, you were the first person I thought of. We're talking about Gran Turismo.
That's right. I appreciate that. Longtime GT fan.
I described you to Anton as the second biggest Gran Turismo fan I know. The only reason that I don't have you number one is I actually do know someone who tried out for the GT Academy, and I have to give them number one status for doing that.
What? Hell yeah, you have to give them the number one. I'm glad to be number two to that. When you sent me that text too, I was like, I wonder who number two is. And I was like, you know what? I'll save it for the podcast.
Yeah, I don't want to drop the name on the podcast out of respect for their privacy.
I think that's fair.
I haven't asked them for their permission to do so, but I will tell you after if you are curious. Anton, I want to begin with a little bit of unusual admin here.
Okay.
Tom Wilkinson just passed away.
Oh, yes. Gotta give the respect here for this admin. Very important.
Yeah, one of the best character actors of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think many people would agree with this. Juntao. He's a very curious actor to study, right? Because both of you would agree with me, right? Character actor, right? Did a lot of supporting roles.
Yeah. I think that's very valid. Like, he's always the British villain.
Right. And yet, he managed to be the best actor in a film nominated for Best Picture. I'm talking about In the Bedroom, 2001. That's about as good as it gets for a character actor. He got his first Oscar nomination for that. I wouldn't call that a very entertaining movie. It's kind of a downer if you've ever seen it, but really just an acting clinic. Him and Sissy Spacek. Marissa Tomei's in that too. Anton, our boy Todd Field from our very own Eyes Wide Shut, he directed that film.
And important to also, note that Mr. Wilkinson has been in a lot of films that maybe a few of our younger listeners may not have realized. I mean, Pat, of course, you made a reference to Juntao, our favorite villain from Rush Hour, but of course, a few films that listeners may recognize: Batman Begins as Carmine Falcone.
Yes.
Yep. Probably a movie younger listeners haven't heard of, but Michael Clayton, that is absolutely my favorite Tom Wilkinson role. That is actually one of my favorite movies from the past 20 years.
George
It's
Clooney
amazing.
too, right?
George Clooney's in that.
I remember that movie. That movie was really good.
Incredible movie.
Yeah.
If anyone's seen the John Adams miniseries on HBO, Wilkinson was an amazing Ben Franklin. And then, of course, in another HBO film, he played the Bush family consigliere, James Baker, in the film called Recount. But he was also in stuff like The Full Monty. He was General Cornwallis in The Patriot. He was in Shakespeare in Love, Valkyrie with Tom Cruise. Just so many movies. Just a fantastic actor. He will be missed.
He was in a 2001 Martin Lawrence classic, Black Knight.
Was he really?
Yes, dude. I remember seeing that with my aunt in the theater. We had nothing to do.
Sir Nulty of Marlborough.
That is a deep cut. I did not have that written down in the notes. He's just an all-time great actor. It's a real shame. He was only 75 years old. But we wanted to give him a shout out because, you know, even if you don't recognize the name, you will absolutely know the face and you will know his work.
Yeah. Yeah. R.I.P. Tom.
Indeed. Any other admin, Anton, you want to get out of the way before we delve in, before we get into this race car and take off?
Well, 2024 is here, and I just hope that everyone's having a healthy and happy start to the new year, and the only best wishes, and of course, all the best to our listeners and our supporters. We're super excited to be here for 2024, and we are keeping this thing going with very strong momentum. I mean, our subscriber count has really been growing. So thank you so much to everyone that's been listening, commenting, engaging. It really has grown so much since we've started, and we're seeing that across all our platforms. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree, Pat.
Completely. And as the subscriber base grows, so too does the feedback that we are receiving. We are getting some just tremendously helpful, thoughtful emails, comments. I guess those are really the only two types of feedback that we're getting, but those are two important ones. Yeah, it's been an incredible journey so far. We just passed our 50th episode, and we have so many more to come. Anton, we only have 4 movies left to cover this season after this. So next week, listeners can hear the Poseidon Adventure, and then maybe only 3 left after this, right? So we have the Poseidon Adventure next week, Captain America, the First Avenger, and then we will be closing out the season with Revenge of the Sith, the 3rd Star Wars prequel.
Ooh.
So get ready for that, folks. We're closing out strong, and I mean, having a lot of fun while we're doing it.
So much fun, all the fun.
To our lovely guest, Peter, is there anything that you'd like to mention or plug, as we always welcome every guest to do?
All right.
It's okay if you don't.
We're just talking general thing to plug out there. Could be anything.
Anything
related to GT.
The stage is yours.
So my wife and I saw Beauty and the Beast at the Walnut Street Theater in Philly. It was sick, dude. Like I actually never realized, like we try to go see a play like every year. And like every time I go in there, like I just get blown away of like what these people are doing. And like you think about it, you've watched an entire Disney movie through song and dance. Like it's just crazy to think that like how much work goes into this, and like it's just so different than a movie, and it's so much more immersive. So the play was awesome. I have to give a shout out to the team that did it. Hell yeah, guys!
Nice, love that.
That's a great plug. Yeah. Coincidentally enough, the local symphony orchestra here where I live, they are doing Beauty and the Beast in a couple of months. Basically, they will show the film, and the orchestra will perform all the music, and there'll be singing. So I think my wife and I are going to go to that.
That's
we love,
cool.
we love going to the symphony. Yeah, they do a bunch of movies every year. Like last year, we saw them do Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, they're really great. If you ever get a chance, Peter, to do that, I know the Philadelphia Orchestra does stuff like that. I definitely recommend doing that. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah, I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, I've seen them do Gladiator. I've seen them do one of the Star Wars movies. It's really cool.
But have you seen them do Gran Turismo?
I have not seen them do Gran Turismo. I don't know how well an orchestra would handle the score to this film.
They'd have to bring out all the different
semi-successfully.
I don't know if they
love the British rap
very well.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I think we can get into this. Based on a true story, Jann Mardenborough is a teenage retail worker and Gran Turismo player who gets the opportunity of a lifetime. He teams up with a former race car driver and idealistic motorsport executive. The team of underdogs risk it all to take on the most elite sport in the world. Gran Turismo was released on August 25th, 2023 by Columbia Pictures, PlayStation Productions, and 2.0 Entertainment. It was directed by Neill Blomkamp. Screenplay was written by Jason Hall and Zach Braylon, with an additional story credit for Alex Z. And it's, of course, based on Gran Turismo by Polyphony Digital. It stars Archie Madekwe, David Harbour, Orlando Bloom, Takahiro Hira, Darren Barnett, Digimon Hounsou, and Jerry Holloway Horner, a.k.a. Ginger Spice. The budget was $60 million, and the box office was $121 million. Peter, I think at this point the listeners know why you're here, but why did you want to talk about Gran Turismo?
Oh, man. So, lifelong Gran Turismo fan. So my earliest memories of like the first video games I've played were that like 2-disc set that you got on the original PlayStation with the Gran Turismo. I've been playing racing games my entire life. Recently, last year, I kind of discovered like real car racing, which is actually super sick. So my business partner like races Porsches and stuff, so he starts bringing me, and I go down there. So I've been driving on a racetrack for like the last year, and it's awesome. And I have like such a respect for what these guys do on a racetrack because it is probably one of the most mentally taxing sports that like I've never experienced anything like it, and these guys are going 190 plus, and it's just wild to see what they can do with cars. And I love them, and I've always been a car guy, so I couldn't say no when you asked. It's just the love of cars, everything. It's just, and I'm such a fanboy too, which I will comment on relative to the movie because I know I have some counterintuitive opinions.
That's an excellent reason. Yeah, when I texted you about being on this episode, I don't think I've ever received a text message response back faster.
Yes, I hung up on clients. I was like, I need to go.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, you may have to cut that.
Yeah. That's a wonderful reason. We're glad to have you here. Anton, this is our second video game adaptation movie.
Really?
Or is it?
There we go.
Yeah. Technically, it's not a video game adaptation, right? You can't really call this a video game movie. It's based on a true story. And in fact, maybe this is controversial, but this is far more interesting to me than an actual video game movie.
I mean, yeah. I don't think it's a hot take. It was definitely an interesting one. And especially in 2023, there were a lot of actual video game adaptations. Of course, we're referencing, we covered the Super Mario Brothers film, but there was a lot of video game releases in 2023.
Didn't Uncharted come out too? I think PlayStation Studios did that.
There was also The Last of Us in 2023.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
Great, by the way.
A few series along, also another series related to the car genre, but not as great. Twisted Metal.
Yeah. That was a thing? I didn't even know about that.
I got sick back in September, and I watched it because it's with Anthony Mackie. I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was hilarious. Like I loved it.
Oh yeah. Okay, I do know you're. Okay.
It was cringeworthy, but I loved it. I do, and I love the fact that he was driving a Subaru. Like you got to respect a good STI, man.
And then we were joking about it before the recording. But of course, Five Nights at Freddy's also released another pretty large video game franchise. But no, we are talking about, of course, Gran Turismo, and definitely a very interesting choice for a film, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is one of the biggest video game franchises of all time. It's been around for what is it, 30 years at this point?
Yeah, I'm 33.
Almost 30 years?
It's got to be. I think the first one came out in like
mid-90s?
In 1997.
Yeah.
Okay, so almost. So we're approaching 30 years. Yeah.
I remember tweaking suspensions with my uncle in Gran Turismo, first PlayStation.
I was going to say, I don't know which one I played, but the first one I played was on the original PlayStation. So it's been a while. The trailer for this film, it really wanted you to know that it was based on a true story. They really emphasized this several times. It's on the poster. It is, I've also seen it in the subtitle of the film, Gran Turismo : based on a true story. Of course, that's not really the official title of the film because that would be silly. But I have seen it promoted that way. The producers and the cast are here to tell you that it's based on a true story. But to be honest, when I saw the trailer for this, at some point in the spring of last year, I just kind of went meh. I wasn't excited for this. I didn't really care for the Need for Speed movie that came out of a few years before this. That was just it was fine. It was all right.
Oh, with Jesse Pinkman? I actually enjoyed that.
It was okay.
I think that's what this one was similar to. I wouldn't describe it a video game adaptation. I would describe it as like a video game license. They licensed it so they can appeal to a movie crowd and a video game crowd, right? Like that's why everyone saw Need for Speed, because it had. Does that make any sense?
No, I can see that. This is definitely not there. When we really think about it, there's no plot for Gran Turismo, so this is very video game adjacent. Right?
Just doing laps.
This was a very intelligent decision on their part to do this.
Yeah.
I had zero knowledge of the true story. I understand that there are many, fans of the game. Like Pete, I'm sure you probably realized that this was based on a true story, or like what it was based on. I certainly did not.
As soon as I saw the trailer, I was like, that could have been me. And then I was like, no, I couldn't.
I did not know what to think when I saw the trailer. Like, I didn't care enough at the time to look it up. I probably should have, because I really wish I had seen this in a theater. This would have been a wonderful movie to see on a big screen with a big sound system.
Yeah. Wait, shout out to, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name, the father of Gran Turismo, Kazunori Yamauchi?
Who has a cameo in this film.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
Shout out to him for creating arguably one of the best franchises we've seen since the inception of video games.
I think he definitely deserves all he deserves his flowers and all the respect for creating the most popular racing franchise since its inception.
The other big deal about this film, which of course I felt that they did a very poor job of promoting, was Neill Blomkamp's involvement as director.
Yes, I agree. Because that was one of the things that as soon as you said the name, I was like, this guy's done great movies. Like, I don't think he gets enough credit.
I was going to say he did a movie
sure about that?
Okay, maybe, okay. Great being relatively speaking, right? I'm not
He did a great movie. I'll say that.
Few.
Which great movie? Maybe our listeners may not recognize the name.
District 9.
Yeah. Which came out all the way back in 2009. That was his first feature-length film. One of the strongest debut feature films from any filmmaker.
Dude, he did Elysium too. Elysium, I think, was a really cool concept with Matt Damon.
Yeah, I didn't like that movie.
And then he did Chappie because he thought that the Ant-word was totally popular amongst the mass populace, which they're not.
I didn't even make it through that movie. I made it about halfway through, and I was like, this is not for me. With that first movie, District 9, there was a lot of hype around his name, right? It's like, is this guy the next Ridley Scott? Is he the next Jim Cameron? But then everybody wanted the sequel to District 9. We still want the sequel to District 9. And then over the next 12 years, he just gives us 3 films that were, I would say, received with a very lukewarm attitude. Elysium, okay, some people liked it better than others. Chappie, I don't think it's a very well-received movie. And then Demonic, which I've never seen. But I like they have their fans, but none of them even come close to the success of District 9. We've been hearing rumors about
District 10,
sequel to that since it came out, and we still haven't gotten it.
I just wanted to mention shouts out to guest. He's been a guest on the show, but also a longtime listener. Nathan Perry wanted to make sure that it's known. A lot of people assume that there's going to be a sequel called District 10, but who knows what the actual title of the sequel will be. It may end up being District 8, maybe a reversal from expectations.
That's a very good.
True.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Are we even going to get a sequel?
Are we even going to get one?
That's true. District 6.5? Is it going to be a Disney spinoff? No one
during an interview for Gran Turismo, Neill Blomkamp was interviewed and stated that essentially there is an indefinite hiatus with District 9 being with a District 9 sequel being put on the shelves for maybe in the future. So
I would love to know more about the details involved in that, because if he wants to make it, he would have made it, right? So I'm wondering, there must be other forces at work here.
Isn't it just so hilarious that there's all these films that we've covered on the podcast where an essential question is, who asked for this? But everyone's asking for a District 9 sequel, but it's just not getting made.
Could it be said that even though we want it, he doesn't want to make it because it may not top the first? Because
very possible.
Remember that Dark Knight episode we were talking about like months ago? And it was like, maybe he's just like, you know what, District 9 was great. I'm not going to taint it.
Well, much respect to him. But at this point, I think we'll take it just because the first one was so great. And, well, he decided to go in a different direction. He didn't end up making it. But he, as we mentioned, made Elysium, Chappie, Demonic. He did make a short film, Halo, live action.
Forward Until Dawn.
Which was, I actually thought that was really cool.
Oh, that was him?
Yeah, that was him, and I thought that was awesome.
All right.
He also did, I guess it's like an anthology series, but it's on Netflix. It's called Oats Studios, and it's like a collection of different like little mini episodes. Some of them are like 8 minutes, some of them are like 10 minutes. Some are like, it's actually really cool. I think if people kind of like more abstract stuff, I would say check it out, because some of them are actually pretty cool. And then just check it out. It'll cost you 8 minutes of your life, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised if you like the guy.
That's it?
And it's on Netflix.
8 minutes? All right, I can do that.
Some of them are like 60 seconds. And it's just like, it's just different ideas that popped up, and then they made them into like, I would say some animated, some not animated. It's really cool. Check it out.
Okay. Well, at one point it was rumored that he was going to be doing an Alien sequel that would have retconned the horrific Alien 3, but that also never materialized. Look, all I know is this. Gran Turismo was probably going to be a big deal upon release, right? Big video game franchise name, Neill Blomkamp, he's a name. But the thing is, the movie wasn't. The budget was fairly modest, but the box office numbers were disappointing. It's looking like a loss for Columbia and Sony. It seemed like it was in and out of theaters faster than one of those cars can get to 100 miles an hour. Like, it was just
nice. Solid.
Thank you. It just didn't make any kind of a spark at the box office. 65% Rotten Tomato score. So, respectable, but nothing amazing. Curiously, the audience score is 98%. That's a big disparity.
So here's a dumb question. Do those box office figures, and I've been noticing this with a lot of movies where they keep talking about them. I feel like these movies aren't making as much money as they used to, like at all.
Well, one thing that is very important to note is that it's a combination of things, but mostly due to inflation, is the cost of making these films has skyrocketed in the past 20 years.
Okay.
No, and I'm actually surprised at how modest this budget was. $60 million is not a lot of money. This, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. This looks like a $200 million movie to me.
It does.
Well, and
it looks very
another
good.
aspect that we don't often see is the marketing budget on top of the actual production budget.
Were they running ads on TV? Because I feel like the first time I saw it, it was on YouTube.
I believe that I saw the trailer for this when I went to see Oppenheimer in July.
Oh,
of course, I don't even watch TV, so I couldn't even tell you if they're running.
I think you're right.
Ads on TV.
I mean, it went up against a pretty stacked summer film line, so it's not like it was the premiere film for the summer. But I mean, big films at the time releasing, of course, were Oppenheimer and Barbie. It came out the same weekend as Barbie, so kind of going one-on-one for that.
Yeah.
No, this came well after that.
Well, fun fact, for between Barbie and Gran Turismo, Gran Turismo was in the first position in front of Barbie for opening release.
And Barbie just broke the world.
Yeah, they made a lot of money.
Yeah.
Bravo, I heard it's really good. Anton liked it.
I loved it. I will go ahead and say I loved it.
I actually haven't seen it, dude. I heard it was like really empowering and stuff too, which I like because I've been reading these articles and stuff about like countries trying to ban a movie, which usually means it's pretty good and it's a threat to like governments.
Well, it was fun. It was fun because it was empowering, but it doesn't shove it down your throat.
I like that. I gotta watch it. I actually bought it for like $5 on Blu-ray because I was like, this would be cool to have.
I know you want to cover it, Anton. Is it even worthy of the Why Wasn't It Better name? Everyone seems to really like it.
I think that's the fun part with the podcast is we can actually cover whatever we want. And who knows, maybe for our future Patreon, we might do an episode where we actually dissect a film and say why it was better.
What?
So just maybe a little bit of a hint and Easter egg for our listeners.
That's the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've covered a few new films on this podcast. This one is new-ish. It came out last year. The reason why that it was ultimately chosen is that it recently became available on Netflix. And my niece actually observed to me, like, why didn't you cover that on the podcast? And I didn't have a good answer. So I added it to the list. And the fact that it was available on Netflix just gave us an excuse to do it.
I guess that's good feedback, Pat. That's a question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're not perfect, Pete.
Yeah.
There's too many films to cover. Like, when I originally thought of the podcast, I very foolishly thought I would struggle to come up with films that met the criteria. And, like, it turns out our list is, like, we have, like, 600 films on the list now. Almost every week, we either get a suggestion or we think of some other movie that falls under the criteria of Why Wasn't It Better? So we're going to be doing this for a while.
Let's go. Love to hear it.
52 episodes in at this point, and nowhere near done.
That's a hell of an achievement, man. I followed this podcast, and they're on like episode 100 now. And it's this finance podcast, and they like started out, and like I probably caught them maybe around like episode 20, and I've been with them ever since. Like that's a big achievement.
Well, when we get to 100, we might have you on, depending on what we're covering.
Wow, yeah, make it a good movie or a less bad movie.
Fair enough.
All right.
Terminator 3 is as lowest as I'll go.
Hannibal was pretty low.
Hannibal was pretty low.
Yeah, okay, Hannibal's the lowest.
I gotta say, Terminator 3, I enjoyed far more than Hannibal.
Yeah, that's true.
Put you at the kiddie table.
Disembowel a man. All right, back to GT, guys. This is what the listeners
Production history for Gran Turismo. The development of this film goes back to 2013, when Sony announced that it was going to make a Gran Turismo movie based on a screenplay written by Alex Z. At that point, Z was probably best known for writing the 2009 Watchmen adaptation. Joseph Kosinski was all set to direct, albeit with a different screenplay in mind. But this idea ended up falling through, and by 2018, Kosinski was officially out. Anton, for what it's worth, Kosinski would have been a great choice to direct this. Based on Tron Legacy and Top Gun Maverick, like this would have been right up his alley. This movie would have, I think, worked really well with him as director.
Probably would have done a better job.
Totally agree.
It seemed like the project was completely dead until May of 2022 when Sony and PlayStation Productions announced that the film was moving forward. Neill Blomkamp was hired to direct a screenplay that was based on Alex Z's original treatment. Writer Jason Hall was brought in to polish it. The official release date was set, and it was announced that the film would be a biographical film based on the story of Jann Mardenborough.
I've heard it as Jann. I thought it was Jann in the film.
I thought it was Jann too. Jann.
All right, I'm gonna say Jann. Jann then. Sorry, Jann. I'll try to say your name right for the rest of this episode.
I'm gonna say
another. Yeah. Another writer, Zach Braylon, was hired. He stated that films like Rocky and Top Gun were influences on the film. That's very, very clear.
On the nose.
Yeah, and in a good way, I think.
Yeah.
Orlando Bloom's character, Danny Moore, is inspired by the real-life Darren Cox. Cox was a former Nissan Europe executive who in 2008 founded the GT Academy to help Sony PlayStation so that racing gamers could have a chance to become professional racing drivers.
Just one sec right there. Was anyone else thrown off by the way that Orlando Bloom said Nissan?
The entire movie.
No, I was not.
I know it's
Nissan.
The correct way to say it, dude.
And I'll tell you why. Okay, so the only reason I was not thrown off by him saying Nissan is that with all the Champions League that I watch, I have this ingrained audio in my head of Clive Tildesley or someone that sounds like Clive Tildesley saying, "Today's match was brought to you by Nissan."
It's the British way to say it. Listen, I understand it, but for someone seeing it from the outside, I'm like, why? Like, what? Like, stop. Are you still the pirate from Pirates of the Caribbean? Like, why are you saying that?
Yeah, it was. It definitely took me out for a little bit, but
Yeah, I got over
definitely. I get you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would have thrown me off if it hadn't been for the Champions League. David Harbour's character, Jack Salter, is not real, but a basically composite of different real-life characters. Filming began in Hungary in November and wrapped up in December of 2022. Gran Turismo was filmed on location on real racetracks around the world, including the Slovakia Ring in Slovakia, the Dubai Autodrome, the Nürburgring, the Red Bull Ring in Austria, and the Hungarian Hungaroring.
Let's go.
Real original name there. Many of the film's racing sequences were shot at the Hungaroring in Hungary, standing in for various circuits. Most notably, the Hungaroring, good lord, stands in for Silverstone during the GT Academy sequences. The drivers drive the circuit in reverse in an attempt to mask the real location, as well as Le Mans, where several of the Hungaroring's distinctive corners are used. The final corner being most notably different to the real-life layout of the Circuit de la Sarthe in spite of the addition of set dressing and digital backdrops to obscure its location. The stunt driver for actor Archie Madekwe was none other than Jann Mardenborough himself, who served as associate producer as well.
I watch a lot of Formula One racing, and I remember when they were driving on the track that they said was Silverstone, and I was like, that doesn't look like Silver. That doesn't. But anyway, irrelevant. But yes, I understand.
No, it's not irrelevant. It's one of the criticisms of this film, actually.
It is.
It's like, what's happening here? You're not in Britain.
Cinematographer Jacques Joffret took advantage of the Rialto extension detachment system of the Sony Venice 2 cameras in order to place sensors in tight locations of cars away from the main camera body. One of the biggest challenges faced that while many of the tracks featured in the film are accurately portrayed, the production was not going to be able to film at Le Mans. This meant that no filming, scanning, or photography or photogrammetry could occur at the actual location. Instead, the visual effects team recreated Le Mans based on racing footage filmed in Hungary and additional computer-generated builds. Composer Stephen Barton was replaced by Lorne Balfe during post-production, although both men would end up receiving credits for their work on the score. And upon release, the film made about double its budget at the box office, so it was considered a disappointment by the studio. Anton, you pointed this out. It got caught up during the Barbie box office freight train. And that is it for the production of Gran Turismo. It's time to talk, why wasn't it better? Number one, we're going to get this out of the way. The Nürburgring crash and the authenticity of the setting.
One of the bigger controversies of the film and the largest criticism has to be that Mardenborough's crash at the Nürburgring being actually used as a narrative element in the film. So there was an actual crash that occurred for during Jann's racing career, and it was accurately depicted. But the actual placement of where it occurred on the timeline for the film was moved around. So it actually occurred 2 years after Mardenborough's debut at Le Mans. So, of course, the fact that there was also a real life fatality in the film, there's definitely a bit of criticism with being able to manipulate the facts, and it seems like there's an implication that it was the wreck that really motivated Jann's ability to get back into the sport and compete at Le Mans. With that, it's definitely a good question to ask ourselves. Is this justifiable? Does it take away from the film? Pete, Pat, what are your thoughts?
It clearly says it's based on a true story, right? Obviously, everyone knows that it's going to have some factual basis, but at the end of the day, it still has to be a movie, right? I understand there was a real life death. I understand that it's awful, but it is still a movie, right? And what they want to do is they want to portray that. So I don't know, when people are criticizing it, I don't really know what they're expecting.
Mm-hmm.
From a Hollywood and story perspective, I think the death makes sense. It does. It sells better. I think it's probably the best place in the story to put it. It's, at the end of the day, when you look at that through the real world lens, it's awful, right? Because I think it does disrespect to the dead by making it a movie. But again, it's pretty clearly that it's saying it's based on a true story. And like, I don't know, that for me, I think it's an unfair criticism of the movie. I do. Like, I understand it. And like, they didn't even say the person that died. Like, did they?
They didn't say any names in the film,
Which
no.
I think is obviously respectful. Yeah, I don't think you should do that, but I don't know. I feel like people are just being like it's a movie, guys.
Right,
Like
but
it's not.
I think. Oh, please go ahead.
I don't think it's like a biography. If that makes sense.
I think what I can totally see where people would be upset. And part of that also is it might seem misleading, especially if a lot of the marketing that you see along with the film, and Pat mentioned it, you see it next to the title based on a true story. When you see that, there's definitely a bit of a feeling that you were deceived a bit. Like, if it didn't happen like it did in real life, then how is it inspiring? But I think that there's so many true elements in the film that really shine through and show that this was a true story. But for the dramatic storyline needed, for the pacing of the story, they had to take some liberties to really make sure that it fit up to what they needed for the film. I mean, and another aspect, of course, how many underdog story sports films do this already?
A lot.
Yeah.
I understand why people objected to this.
Yes.
Twisting the timeline is something that filmmakers probably should avoid. And I get it. Someone died. It is a tragedy. It was probably disingenuous of the people who are responsible for the screenplay to put this into the film in the way that they did.
Yeah.
But Anton, you were just about to get into this. This happens a lot. There is almost no biographical film that you can find that doesn't play with the facts in some way. This is what Hollywood does. It is not unique to this film. I didn't have any knowledge of this before I watched the movie. I thought they did a proper job of showing the guilt that his character felt, even though it wasn't his fault. It is worth pointing out that Mardenborough was cleared of any wrongdoing. What I would have found far more objectionable is if the film had somehow glossed over his culpability. That would have been far more egregious to me. Now, of course, there was no culpability. They didn't do that. Look, like I said, I understand the objections over this, but there are just so many movies that twist facts and timelines. So if you're going to criticize this movie for it, you need to criticize all movies for doing the same thing, and not all movies get criticized for it.
Yeah. I think that's that's the best way to say it.
I mean, when you think about moving timelines to build dramatic tension, or even creating composite characters that didn't exist in real life, at the end of the day, it's important that we always see it from this lens of the filmmakers are trying to tell a story and using elements based on real life. I think that's where it can seem misleading, but yes, totally agree, Pat and Pete. It's films do this as part of the filmmaking process. I mean, if anyone's ever seen Invictus, there were definitely it's a great film, but there were definitely elements that were not true to the actual timeline, or maybe misrepresented. There was the recent film American Underdog that told the story of NFL quarterback Kurt Warner. Definitely a lot of elements there that some were taken out either completely omitted or just changed. But it doesn't take away from the fact that there really was someone who played so much Gran Turismo and was so much better at it than anyone else that they were actually able to jump from playing on the couch to actually racing in real life. And I
Real
think that's
life
pretty
Gran
inspirational.
Turismo endurance races.
It's pretty inspirational.
It's inspirational, and it is. I thought the film did a very good job of showing just how sensational of an achievement it was for him to even get there. And Pete, you were beginning to get into this. This is changing the subject a bit, but you were beginning to get into this a bit. How this track didn't look accurate. You're like, that. Wait a minute, they're not in England. This doesn't look like that track. I know very little about the intricacies of racing, so like me hearing that they got this detail wrong here and there, it doesn't mean anything to me. But again, just like with the Nürburgring crash, you said it was irrelevant. I think it's fair criticism. I do.
Yeah, and the thing is too, right? Like, listen, I watch Formula One all the time. I understand how these tracks look. There's certain corners that you're like, holy crap, I want to see how they're going to portray that. But like for the purposes of a movie, right? Like again, right? I just feel like, especially today, we're just overly critical about certain things. Like, yes, there were different tracks, but it was still an awesome goddamn movie. Do I expect them to have the budget like a Formula One team to be in Dubai on Tuesday and then be in Hungary on Wednesday, and then by Thursday they're filming at Silverstone? Like, no, that's just an unrealistic expectation. But with that being said, if you're gonna make a bold claim like Silverstone, come on, man, CGI some of that stuff in there so people believe it. Because I maybe represent what 1 to 2% of the population that watched the movie.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, right. So I can't be mad at them for it. I feel like it's overly critical because you got to view a movie through a movie lens, and I still think it was a good movie.
I think they did the best they could.
Correct.
Like with the recreating of Le Mans and everything, they weren't able to film there, so they worked with what they had.
Yes. And I think they did the best you could. And I still think the end product was great.
I see it as there was investment in time and efforts in other places that really shone through, whether that's they used high-speed drone footage to capture the race. The director of photography on the film did a fantastic job with that, and especially the way that they filmed the racing scenes, impeccable. So I can see where they put the detail, and otherwise maybe they miss it in a few other areas.
Exactly. I would rather them produce a good movie than be like, we really got the bleachers right on turn 7 at Silverstone. Like that's not going to sell a movie, right? Like,
maybe they got this detail wrong here and there, but to both your points, I never once felt watching this that they phoned anything in.
No, not at all.
Number 2 reason why this wasn't better, the performances. I thought Madekwe was decent.
I thought he sounded like he had a cold the whole movie.
Is that because he was just a British teenager, though? Or sorry, Welsh teenager.
Oh, he's Welsh?
I think he lives in Cardiff, right?
I just really like playing Gran Turismo.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
his
Cardiff
father
City.
played for Cardiff City.
Cardiff City.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he did a decent job of playing like the audience surrogate to the racing world. Like he just basically had to show up and experience this world for the audience. But yes, Anton, I agree with you. He does have a little bit of a marble mouth. I think he mumbles some of his dialogue. I was grateful for the subtitles. But look, sometimes it's a thing with performances, like it is what it is. But I didn't feel like his performance ruined the film for me in any way.
No, not at all. One thing that, and I'm going to do my best to say this guy's name because I know his face. Djimon Hounsou?
Djimon Hounsou, yes.
Djimon Hounsou. I feel like he was wasted talent in the movie. Like, I figured the best way to put this is in video game terms. He's a level 65 playing like a level 25 role. And I don't know why they have him there. Like, I feel like it's an insult to his talent.
Well, Djimon Hounsou would agree that there's been a lot of underappreciation for his acting and abilities in Hollywood, but I think that's probably more for another episode or even just another conversation. But I think that yes, it feels like it's a very strong performance for very few scenes.
Exactly.
But I mean, I'm sure you'd agree, very pivotal scenes.
Yeah, you're right. Because like the whole reason he's doing this is like it boils down to the one thing, right? Dad doesn't believe in me. I'm gonna prove him wrong. I'm the underdog. Dad shows up in the end, and you're like, everyone's happy, and I'm like, this is great. I loved it.
Dad, I loved you the whole time. Look, there's a sticker on my helmet.
Yeah,
that I love you.
Right. I just don't know how to show love because my dad didn't show me. Listen, I'm gonna bite on that every time.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a ton to do, but I thought the melodrama was handled appropriately with his character. You know, that's a very cliched father doesn't approve of what I do type of role, but I don't think it was heavy-handed. He is a good enough actor that you believe the performance for sure.
Yeah, I believed
Yeah.
it. I just feel like they misplaced him. Like maybe he
Yeah,
wasn't the
that's fair.
guy for Jan's dad because you could have gotten, I don't want to say a less skillful actor, but like not the gladiator guy and not the guy from Rebel Moon.
Okay.
Like he was like a supporting actor.
Of all the films that he's been in, you're going to call out Rebel Moon.
I know it's terrible, but I just saw it, which I
Yeah.
actually didn't think it was that bad, by the way.
I didn't. I lasted about 10 minutes through
We
it.
might have to cut that out.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
People are gonna boycott the podcast. Be like, what did he just say?
Nah, I'm going to keep it in.
But
the star. Let's talk about the star of the show, though.
Yeah.
It's time. David Harbour, tremendous
Harper?
screen presence.
Yeah.
The film comes alive whenever he's on screen. I have in my notes here, he steals the show, but I don't even know if that's fair. Was it his to begin with? Like, I don't really know who's competing with him, and he just dominates every scene that he's in.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
he brings up every scene and every actor in those scenes.
I think he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, David Harbour's had a really interesting career. Of course, he really hit the mainstream with his famous depiction of Sheriff Hopper in the Netflix favorite, of course, Stranger Things. But before that, he was mostly a character actor in a lot of films. Brokeback Mountain. He's in
a Bond movie.
That's
Quantum
the
of
movie you
Solace.
pick, Anton.
Yeah, Quantum of Solace.
Yeah.
But now we really start to see him in much larger roles, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for it. He understood this material perfectly. He has fun in the scenes that need him to dial it up. Like the training sequences, the pep talks, when he has to yell at them, he's yelling. But what makes the performance great for me is he handles the dramatic scenes with a surprising amount of heart, right?
Yeah.
And I guess we saw him do this in Stranger Things.
Feel it.
So it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that he's capable of this. His character could have been a cliche, but he manages to give Jack Salter like a real personality. He has a little bit of an arc. I think a lesser, dumber movie would have tried to make him, quote unquote, redeem himself by being one of the drivers in the Le Mans race, where he's just like, I can put the helmet on and I'll conquer this track. A lesser movie would have done that, but they avoid that cornball crap.
Yeah. He stayed in the role of mentor.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to give this shout out to both, Harbour and Medekwe, who, as like the film's leads, it's amazing for me to see their performances and what's essentially right. It's an underdog film, but it doesn't feel like, you said it, Pat. It doesn't feel like a cornball cheesy underdog film, and I think it is due to these are both actors that really have you rooting for them, and that there is a sincerity to their performances that you feel for them, and not in a very forced, cheesy way that you'll usually see in underdog films.
Harbour said he based his performance on Gene Hackman and Hoosiers. I can see it.
Definitely can see
Long
that.
story short, I want more David Harbour.
Who doesn't?
Nobody.
Yeah, I want me some more Harbour too. Let's make a movement for that. More David Harbour.
You know who I don't need more of, though?
Who?
I hate saying this, but Orlando Bloom. I don't need more of him.
Mr. Bloomin' Onion.
Was his salary paid in Red Bull? Because his energy levels in this movie are
way
bonkers.
too heavy, dude. Way too.
Nissan.
Look, I understand he's playing a charismatic marketing executive, but he just needs to dial it back 15% in every scene he's in.
Yeah.
He's just hamming it up. We've seen him be far more understated than this. Like, he played this role like he is in a video game. But this isn't that kind of movie.
No.
They're presenting this to us as a serious story. Did you notice when the drivers show up at the GT Academy and Salter is giving them the pep talk about how he's here to prove them wrong and he's here to see them fail? It just cuts back to Bloom's character, and he's just doing these weird, screwed up facial expressions. Like he's not even saying anything, almost like he's tweaking.
I agree with you, Pat. I think of all of the characters that either felt mishandled or unnecessary, and I feel like Bloom's characters was more mishandled whereas the love interest was more unnecessary. But back to Bloom for a little bit. I feel like there was definitely confusion on my part of whether or not is he someone that you can trust? Is he someone that's actually rooting for the main character? And I don't even know why the film tried doing that.
I agree with you on this. And I think this is a fault in the writing. The subplot of him pushing for the American driver, and then they seem to imply throughout the film that he has some kind of backroom agreement with Salter. They never fully developed it. To your point, Anton, his performance oscillates between the I believe in you hype man to scheming corporate lackey. Like, can we trust him or not? It's not really clear. There are a handful of lines that imply he has ulterior motives, but they don't flesh it out. That is not Bloom's fault, though. That is the writing.
Yeah, First of all, I mean, just look to Formula One, for example. There's not many American race car drivers out there, unless they're racing NASCAR. So that would probably be the worst business decision they've ever made. Because the only American-linked race team that we have in North Carolina was linked with the Russians for a while, and now they're gone, and we usually get like 19th and 20th. But our drivers are getting better, and our team is there, and I support them because they're the only guys we have out there. But we're not very good, so I think that'd be a bad bet. The other question I have, too, and I don't know much about this, even though Orlando Bloom kind of sucked as a character in the movie, is he close to the real guy? I think it was Darren Cox. Like, is that an accurate portrayal of him? Like, are we judging him as a character when we need to be judging the portrayal of the character?
I don't know.
So I've seen a few interviews with with Cox, and he seems like very much just one, like a marketing executive that really wanted to push for the GT Academy. And there isn't anything that would have indicated there was any ulterior motive to that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's important to look at this whole, even like the whole thing, like while it's a very inspiring story, it's a way for Sony to make more money and a way for Nissan to make more money. And I feel like that's what's, of course, driving Bloom's character and, Cox in real life. So we can't take that away from it.
And Puma, don't forget them.
Yeah, can't forget Puma
and Red Bull.
And it's just weird to try to have a storyline that's not even fleshed out, put in the film like that. And I think for the most part, the film has great pacing. But even putting that little subplot in the moment where we're wondering whether or not Jann actually won the race, it actually slowed down the momentum of that scene, and it just felt so unnecessary.
They must have cut stuff out because they just never go anywhere with that subplot.
A Snyder Cut's coming. 7 hours. Raw footage.
They must have just cut stuff out. That's the only explanation for it.
Because how long was it? It was like 2 hours, right?
2:15.
Yeah, they probably did They probably did cut stuff out.
Yeah,
because that's still pretty long.
No, it is long, but I agree with you, Anton. It is a very well paced movie for the most part. There was rarely a moment that dragged. And then, did any of you recognize Ginger Spice?
No, not until you texted me today.
It had to take someone mentioning it for me to realize that was Ginger Spice in the film.
I recognized her, but couldn't place her. And then when I saw the name in the credits, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because, of course, Jerry Halliwell, her real name, she is married to Christian Horner, who is the team principal of the F1 racing team Red Bull.
Let's go Red Bull.
That's why she's credited as Jerry Halliwell Horner. This is a movie primarily marketed to young adults. Anton, you mentioned the love story here.
What?
It's a little cheesy.
You play a video game? Actually, it's a simulator.
You mean it's a video game?
I want to read some of the dialogue to hear. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go? I would choose New York because I hear they have great pizza.
Thanks, Jann.
Do you want to go to Tokyo because of your game? It's actually not a game.
It's a simulator.
It's a simulator.
I tell you, I'll race for Nissan.
Can someone pass me a tissue?
Thank goodness this only lasts about 60 seconds. I was really worried at that bonfire scene. I was like, oh no, how long is this going to go for?
Yeah. It's a weird scene.
Thankfully, it's about a minute. They knew. They didn't ruin it.
Yeah, they had to give him something though. They had to give him like you know that nerd that's like still playing, which basically was me, right? That's still playing the simulator, thinking he's gonna break out. Come on, you got to throw the girl in there.
Yeah, I understand why they did it, and I thought their moments in Tokyo were actually kind of fun when they go out and they're at the sushi bar, which is a very famous sushi bar with a sushi chef, by the way. And they go to a club. Like, that was all cool. Tokyo was really well filmed. But I actually think the actual drama in this film led to some of the best moments of the film. Like his mother's reaction to the crash, David Harbour's confession to him about quitting racing. That's like my favorite scene in the movie. And then when he finishes the track at Le Mans, it's like really well done stuff. It's really good drama. considering like what this movie is.
Not only that, with just how it was layered, how it was paced, the dramatic tension built throughout the scene, the way that you see the little details, whether, like, for example, when you see in the beginning of the film Yann's racing to beat the cops, it seems a little cheesy with the video game effects, but that's actually more in tune with maybe like the first game. The layering of the effects later, more and more in the film, really starts to touch on that it's more elegant, that he's more in tune, it's much more cutting edge. And I feel like all of those details really play into the fact that they put a lot of care into how they were pacing and telling the story.
I think we're getting into the production here, Anton.
Oh, and is that not is that not another reason? Let's go in.
Yeah, third reason why it wasn't better is our general thoughts on the production. Anton, I'm with you on the pacing. I'm with you on the effects. I was a little worried at first when they start inserting the graphics that, you know, is very clearly from the different games. But I thought they did it pretty tastefully. And I got to say, I don't think I'm alone in thinking this. I am surprised Neill Blomkamp directed this, but I'm not unhappy with the choice.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised. But what's interesting is you can see the elements of Blomkamp's abilities from previous films being used in this film, and it's so much better for it. I think one of the aspects that can maybe twinges on a little bit of the controversial aspects of the film of like being based on a true story is there are elements of the photography and how they're shooting the film almost feels like a documentary. It feels like real life, and that's something that's a bit of a staple of Blomkamp's directorial style. And I think the film totally benefited.
Great use of handheld cameras in scenes. It's a really visceral movie, obviously. I thought that it felt like a far more mature Michael Bay film.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what Blomkamp's doing here. And, you know, we talked about the budget a little bit earlier. He deserves a lot of credit for squeezing every dollar out of that. I really do think this looks like a $200 million movie. I was blown away when I read this only cost $60 million. This is one of the best uses of a budget that size that I can recall seeing in recent years. I found the racing sequences incredibly well done.
Yeah.
They're really exciting. When the graphics actually pop up, I never felt that it was intrusive. I thought it was always benefiting the story. I didn't mind the freeze frames where it tells you what place Jann's in, what lap he's on. I thought that was all tastefully done. That's very easy to ruin that kind of stuff, right? It's very easy to make that corny. The interior shots of the engines, again, very easy for that to go wrong. I enjoyed all of it. I thought it worked well within the plot.
And this is merely just a criticism from, I think, as I said earlier, I think it tries to aim to do two things. Attract two audiences, like a game audience and as well as a movie audience. One thing I wish they did was, like, the coolest part about Gran Turismo was it was a racing game that lets you customize and tweak anything on your car. Two things that I think anyone that plays Gran Turismo and like plays it, I think, competitively or wants to, you always look at the telemetry of your cars. So I wish they had a tiny bit more of him tuning his flux capacitor, you know, tweaking his brakes and saying, you know what, this is why I chose this racing line instead. Again, I think that's criticism from someone that likes racing and watched the movie and like wants to be loyal to a franchise as much as you can, but I don't know if that's unfair. What do you guys think?
No, I don't think it's unfair.
No, not at all.
I think they did a pretty good job of balancing how to market this to different audiences.
Yeah.
It is solid work from the director of photography. The camera work is great. And this is a really good movie to watch if you have a good sound system. I have a good sound system, not a great one. And this made me wish I had a better one.
So I watched it at home and like I've created this like, I guess, quasi home theater system with like this Sonos, and I waited till it was on TV so I can watch it at home. It's sick. It's like really dope. So
I believe it.
Highly encourage you to watch it loud, very loud.
There was only a handful of shots when I could really tell when they were using CG. I thought most of the CG in the film was really tastefully done. Again, with the budget, really impressive stuff. Anton, again with the pacing, I took note of this. By the time they get to Le Mans, there's only about 20 minutes left in the film. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yes.
I had really not checked my watch at all up until that point.
And that's a solid amount of time to really push for the climax of the film. Like if that's going to be how you're going to finish it, 20 minutes is like, that's a fantastic like constraint to, you know, bring it home.
Yeah, I mean, I always expected a Gran Turismo movie would be in a fictional universe that like the video games took place in, and that would not interest me at all. I would have like less than no interest in seeing that type of a film.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that this was just based on this story is a big selling point. You know, is the story predictable? Yes. Are most sporting movies predictable? Yes. But they did a very realistic job of portraying, like, okay, he's a professional race car driver, but he never won a race. I think a lesser movie would have shown him winning Le Mans. They didn't do that. They avoided that cliche. You know, like I really do think a lot of movies could make that mistake, and they don't.
When you think about the core of Gran Turismo, and I'm talking about the game, it's essentially a way to make something that's very expensive, which is access, a wide variety of cars and being able to put them in a racetrack and be able to drive them on a racetrack. That's something that's not very accessible for a lot of people. They make it accessible. And when you think of that concept and what they're able to do with the film, it's, I think, a really great parallel. And in that sense, they were able to not only take the actual story of someone that was able to was able to leverage the game and the simulation aspects to jumpstart a career in actual racing, but also make the film accessible to folks that maybe aren't as familiar with driving or with racing, and being able to enjoy the underdog elements and the really strong storytelling.
No, I think that's actually, as like driving on like a racetrack, man, you see these guys come down there with like these huge trucks, like, and most of these guys come down there with like a $400,000 or $500,000 budget, and like they're just paying to race with all this cool stuff. Like they're not getting paid, they're not doing anything. So I never thought about it that way. But it's a terribly expensive sport, and like most people don't ever make money doing it. But accessibility, wow, that's a pretty interesting way to look at it. I actually enjoy that. Yeah.
Oh, paying to race? You mean like Louis Crappa?
Yes.
Who was not a real who was not a real person in real life.
But he was driving that, like, wasn't he driving like a Lamborghini or something? Like,
yep, yes he was.
Was it gold colored or
yeah?
Trying to race a Lamborghini against a GTR.
He was essentially
outrageous.
He always reminded me of the main villain from the third Rocky movie. No, sorry, from the fourth Rocky movie.
Oh, Ivan Drago?
Yeah, it's just
yeah.
Let's put up like a villain that will antagonize that's very flashy and will antagonize the main character.
I got to give the actor credit, because he, from the very second you see him on screen, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he played it perfectly.
Yeah, he did.
As soon as he popped up, I was like, villain, you're gonna get passed in the end.
Yeah. There was him and the German driver, but they didn't make him particularly unlikable. He was just kind of in the way.
Yeah, which was interesting.
What does David Harbour's character call Louis Crappa's outfit? Like a clown show or whatever? Yeah.
Is it me, or does Darren Barnett always look older than he actually is?
How old is he?
He's 32. And I just looked at that, but like I remember, oh God, don't judge me for this. For some reason, I ended up watching Never Have I Ever with my wife. I actually enjoyed it. He looks like he's 45 in the entire show, and he's got that same look in Gran Turismo where he just looks so old, but he's actually like a year younger than me.
I can admit that the first time I actually saw Darren Barnett was in his American Pie Presents film, Girls Rules, which was not a good film, and I don't know why I just admitted that on the recording.
You want me to cut that out too?
No, it's fine. Leave it in. I'm vulnerable.
Okay. Well, I have somewhat embarrassing. I had no idea who Darren Barnett was until you just said it. No idea.
I only, in fair warning, I only know who he was because I've seen his face in Never Have I Ever, which was, I mean, it's like a teen drama show, which I think was okay. But that's where I saw him in that, and that's the only other place I've ever seen him in my life. And then he showed up in Gran Turismo, and I was like, whoa, what are you doing here?
I liked the soundtrack to the film too. Usually I don't like pop songs inserted into a movie, but I thought these were all done appropriately. And then, Peter, this one's for you. Orlando Bloom's character is wearing a mighty nice Tag Heuer Monaco.
Yeah,
great watch.
Big tag guy.
I know you are.
I appreciate that. I do. I always appreciate nice watches. When I was younger, I never really did, but like now, I have a very, very specialized taste, and I enjoy them. I do. I respect a good timepiece.
I couldn't find much information on what the other characters were wearing. Jann was wearing some kind of like old school like Casio, but I couldn't tell what David Harbour's character was wearing. You would think it would be Tag Heuer, just given the nature of the setting of the film. Yeah, overall, I thought this is a really fun Nissan Puma commercial. Just kidding.
Wait,
logos plastered everywhere. That's a big part of motorsports. Product placement is not always a negative thing. It works fine in this film.
Can we give a shout out to that GT3 RS that like when Jann's like trying to drive again, that like David Harbour rolls up in?
Oh yeah.
That's a sexy car, gentlemen.
It is.
Sorry, Porsche.
Yeah.
Porsche.
It's a perfect. Were they on the Nürburgring?
Yes.
I think they were because he says finish the lap. Yeah.
Oh god, it'd be like one of my dreams to drive on that track before I die. It's like
it's not hard to do. It's a public road.
I know. You can drive on it, man. It's
you can go
one day.
I've been on the Autobahn, Pete.
Yeah, me too. That was an exhilarating
That's
experience.
Good stuff.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Yeah, highly recommend people do that.
Just rent a car.
Yeah, I flew into Frankfurt and we drove down to Munich for Oktoberfest. The Autobahn and driving in Germany is one of the craziest experiences I've ever driven. And driving in Germany is completely different than driving in the US. And I think that's why there's so many less car accidents. Like when you watch people, what they drive and how well these people are their awareness on the road. It's like driving in a war zone in the United States trying to go get Dunkin' Donuts in the morning. So highly recommend people do that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I've done a similar drive from Frankfurt to Berlin and back.
Sick.
And there is something particularly satisfying about seeing on your GPS 7 hours and getting there in 3.
Yes. And not having to worry about getting a ticket.
Yeah.
You're literally at the craziest thing I've ever seen in Germany is you will go from these all right, I'm just gonna give a shout out. 2 things. You go from these zones where you're allowed to do an unlimited amount of speed, right? So you can be doing 160 in a 6 series. Not that I've ever done that or anything. And then all of a sudden you get to the zone and it shows you, okay, you need to slow down to 100 kilometers. I've never seen hundreds of people get to this sign and obey that line. They get to it, and I'm talking Lamborghinis, R8s, C Series, S classes, AMGs. Everyone drops down to 100 kilometers and is so organized. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And then that sign goes like almost the green light in a racetrack, and they all just take off again. When you're driving in the left lane, in the US, for some reason, people will go into the left lane and just stay there and not be aware that people want to pass them. And then they'll yell at you.
They're not supposed to.
And then they'll say, oh, I'm doing 80. Like, no, dude, you're wrong. Move over. People in Germany will observe you. They'll see what you're doing. They'll put their blinker on. They'll let you by, and they'll completely merge. The awareness on the road, it's amazing. And I also know, I think that
only used for passing.
Yes, and I also think that getting a German driver's license is significantly harder than the U.S.
Yeah, it is a lot harder. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah, here it's like, well, you're breathing, so you're good.
We could do a whole podcast about my love for visiting Germany.
Yeah. Next week on
Undiscovered Worlds. No, I'm kidding. Pete gets that joke. I wanted to ask you both this because you're way more into these video games than I am. Were there a lot of Easter eggs in this film like there were in Mario?
There were.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned one of them, Pat. I think the actual video game sounds and effects, not only for Gran Turismo, but even for the platform, you'd hear a lot of those effects throughout the game. The overlays for the placement, I think that's huge for any PlayStation gamer. Now, Pete, you gave the shout out to Gran Turismo creator Kazunori Yamauchi earlier on in the episode. He made a cameo.
Yes.
That's a pretty big Easter egg in the film.
Yes, he did. Not many. I mean, no one's gonna catch that. But like as soon as I saw him, I was like, "Holy shit!" Oh, you may have to cut that out. Sorry.
Yeah, pretty big Easter egg there. Some listeners may not know that the actual gaming rig with the wheel that Jann's character drove to place for the GT Academy, that's actually an exact replica of real life Jann's gaming rig at home that he used to qualify for the GT Academy. So that's actually another really cool detail that the film included. And one more that I wanted to just mention is the different cars that they used in the game. Very intentional, of the most popular cars that are driven in Gran Turismo. So definitely a lot of fun Easter eggs there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was gonna say, do cars count as an Easter egg? Because the 23 GT3 RS will do it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, very intentional in that. If you're a fan of the games, and especially even just of racing, it's like that catches your eye for sure.
Well, I think we've summarized our feelings on this film quite a bit. We talked about the controversy about the Nürburgring crash. We talked about the performances. We gave our thoughts on the production. Gentlemen, let's bring this home.
Okay.
And describe whether or not we liked it, and we give our ratings. Peter, as you're the guest, would you like to go first?
You know what? I will go first this time. All right. I'm going to give you the letter first, and then I'm going to drive home some reasons why and where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
I'm going to give it a solid B+. I think in today's day and age, I'm reasonable. So I understand that they used the Gran Turismo name and they had to build a racing movie that was accessible to everyone because of the biggest market. I think they did that. I think the story of an underdog, big underdog guy, of like coming up on a simulator and getting into racing, especially now that like I drive cars and I understand like how horribly hard and expensive it is to be in a position where someone's like, go drive my car and don't crash it. I think that's awesome. I love the portrayal of that. Super cool. I think homage to the people that play in the game. Even though I wanted to see a little more of the tuning, I understand there was still enough. The racing line, the graphics, all of it's super cool. Cars were awesome. I love the movie from the beginning into the end. I think overall just very well done. I think some of the criticism out there from the critics is a little harsh, and I think it's a little misplaced. I understand the sensitivity of changing the timeline about another human being dying, but I think we have to view it as a movie that was quote unquote based on a true story and not a biography. We shouldn't classify it as a nonfiction movie. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So overall, B+.
Very good. This is one of those movies to me where it's not going to be fantastic when you're going into it. You just want it to be entertaining. I just wanted to be entertained for 2 hours, and I did not want my time to be wasted. This was not a waste of my time. David Harbour has enough screen presence that my interest was held throughout. The rest of the performances were fine, Orlando Bloom notwithstanding. There's no standouts besides Harbour, but there's no Sam Worthington level of blandness. I thought it was really well paced. I thought the racing scenes were outstanding, really exhilarating, really good work from Neill Blomkamp. It was a little montagey at times, but that's okay. I can forgive that. You're trying to tell basically somebody's life story in 2 hours. I enjoyed the music. And overall, I did not think that the film took itself too seriously. It treated the material well. I understand the criticism about the Nürburgring crash. I do think it's fair, but having no knowledge of that before I saw the film, I still enjoyed the film very much. Overall, I think this is a pretty good movie. I rate it a B-.
Very nice, Pat. To start off, I'm going to give a list of some sports underdog films and just as you listen, think about the different feelings that, that are elicited when you hear them. So, of course, Rocky, Hoosiers, Rudy, Remember the Titans, The Rookie, Seabiscuit, American Underdog, Moneyball. There are so many underdog films that Hollywood loves this trope and loves being able to tell these stories. It draws in a lot of viewers. It's very popular in the box office. And there's always definitely a little bit of cynicism from me when I go and watch a film like this, because I think, okay, it's going to hit these tropes and we know what to expect. It's going to be the hardened coach that actually has a soft spot for our hero, the hero that is defying all odds, the love interest, the rival or the villain that is always plotting against our hero. And I think like what's amazing about this particular film is all the elements that were put together to really tell the story. One, were just so well done. Blomkamp was able to take his abilities of being able to depict events almost in a documentarial style and really show this human element of really an incredible and inspiring story of someone that was able to really take what he's learned from a video game and apply it into real life racing. And so when I think about that and I think about these other, underdog films, a lot of similarities in being able to take from true stories, but maybe from comparing to a few of those films, not all of them are always able to do it in a way and execute in a way that doesn't come off as a little cheesy. And I have to give credit to the actors in this film, Harbour, and Yann's actor as well, Madekwe, for doing such an amazing job in being able to drive the right subtlety and being able to drive the passion in the right moments to really have you rooting for them the whole time. I think that Gran Turismo is a fantastic game, and the film itself is a great mix between being able to take, again, from what I shared before, being able to make racing accessible for the masses, and being able to make this movie accessible for the masses as well. So I think this was a great film. I really enjoyed it. I think that I missed it. I should have seen this in theaters because I feel like that would have been a great experience. I'm giving this film an A-.
Wow. Are we allowed to give a recommendation to the listeners that like racing movies? Like another racing movie that they can watch? Or should we
Yeah, of course.
So,
of course.
Rush. It tells the story of Niki Lauda and James Hunt.
Oh, yeah.
All time.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the best racing movies I've ever seen.
Oh, Peter, that's on our list.
Oh, what? If you will.
Yeah, it was a box office bomb.
I know. I know it was.
Yeah.
I loved it, man. I thought it was awesome.
Do you want to be on that episode?
Yeah, sure. Honestly. I loved it.
Yeah. Same.
Was that would that be like why it should have been better, but it was
No, a box office bomb is perfect criteria for the podcast. You're like, well, why didn't people like it? Like, why didn't it make money?
All right, I'm in. Yeah, absolutely. I love racing movies.
Worthy of a discussion. You know what's not a good one? Driven with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh god, that was horrendous. I remember, shout out, they actually made a game on PS2, which actually wasn't terrible.
Yep, Driven. I remember Driven.
It absolutely wasn't horrendous.
You know what was a great racing film?
Fast and the Furious.
Cars.
Yeah.
Like, no joke.
Yeah.
Love that movie.
Cars is classic.
The first one.
Yeah, the first one.
I watched all of them, and like I got a soft spot for those movies, man. I love them. They're like a good feel good, warm, fuzzy Pixar. I'm gonna watch it every time.
They're fine. They're not some of my favorite Pixar films at all.
There's definitely better ones, of course, but I thought Cars was
of course.
Fast 10.
Well,
I'm just kidding. The movie was terrible.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Don't waste your time.
I won't. Well, that is it for Gran Turismo. We will see you next week when we talk about the Poseidon Adventure. And once again, Happy New Year.
Yeah.
To all of our listeners.
Hopefully 2024 is great for everyone. Hopefully those resolutions stick.
Indeed.